So if you compare the Civil War to the aftermath, there's some huge contrast, but I think it was more the loss of the aftermath of Civil War that in a sense started racism of a major scale, because Civil War itself, I think, was more about the brutality of man rather than actual racism, because I mean, people were basically killing people, crazy here and there. Um, so, for example, I've heard some argument by people who, I mean, some of them criticize it for being revisionist history, but some of them argue that, for example, in the South there was more of a fight for against the North because they didn't like the whole centralization thing, and that slavery wasn't really the issue, but more like the construction of the issue, I guess. That's why they were pro-slavery, but I think it was. But I think if you kind of lived there, then I kind of do think that you had more reason to fight against slavery either way, because it was kind of like a huge evil, in a moral sense. So yeah, so it kind of wasn't really that hard to choose the North, really. But yeah, but that's the argument I heard why the Civil War happened to begin with, at least by some people online. But yeah, I just think the whole war itself was more of a brutality of man, and not so much racism really. In itself, I don't think that was the whole point. But you can maybe argue that maybe the intention of massive angry people, maybe that's where people get it from. But I really do think it was more the aftermath. I just think being a slave itself was a shitty thing to be. I mean, if you were a slave, then you had no freedom, so that sucks. But yeah, I do think the racism was more the aftermath of the war, because, and I'm gonna tell you why. Uh, and I have mentioned the guy in a other video, but Woodrow Wilson, he's the guy who I would say is the architect of racism, and you can even compare that to Obama in a sense of the modern day era, because what they sort of have in common is the whole social control. Like, if you take Woodrow Wilson. Um, that guy, in a sense, paved a way for eugenics, social control, and he also greenlighted the Birth of the Nation 1915 movie, which in a sense resurrected the KKK, which was a lynch mob who murdered black people, and and he sort of was the guy who made all this happen basically. So he was the worst human and the worst president ever. Yeah, so really, if you want to blame someone for racism, you can blame that guy, really. But um, and also the aftermath, really. I mean, that guy infected so much of the social control system that and and if you compare that in modern time with Obama, I mean, I guess the tide has turned more though, because I do think there's more focus more on the it's more like in the Marxist narrative of what is considered oppressor versus the oppressed, and I also do think Marxism itself is a very fancy way of thinking, because it kind of works on the anarchist way of who is considered the oppressed and who is the oppressor, of like you have the worker and you have the elites. So yeah, it's not very clear really. It kind of works. It should really work more as a philosophy and not so much of a political movement, because it's not like you get an actual functional system with the communism, because it doesn't work. But maybe I'm getting off topic here. But the point is. Uh, the difference between Democrats maybe back then was that they kind of maybe follow more of the majority was the ruler, so they added social control to that era, and after the civil rights era of the 60s, which had some good thing with anti-discrimination rules. You can't discriminate people based on ethnic, race, religious background. That was fine. I think that was good part of the 1960s. But um, the point is though, it wasn't really popular to hey, guess who the masters are. So So yeah, it was more like focused more on the rights of the minorities, and the majority kind of have it all good. So but you see kind of how this adds up. It's this whole social control system that it's yeah, that's evil. Because if you compare it to Obama, I mean, he kind of weaponized the internet, tech, the tech industry and such. So he kind of had this social control and the whole authoritarian aspect, and that's what's evil, really. Because I do think there should be some kind of equal opportunity for everyone to be who they are, and that racism has no place at all. Whoever it is. But yeah, that's the point. Is the whole social control aspect that's evil. Uh, because what it does is kind of rewards certain elites who can kind of dictate and control people on manipulative levels of especially this is very true in terms of the whole bait culture. So yeah, you kind of have this two kind of evil. It's a social control aspect, and then you have the whole racist monetary system, which really is the whole bait culture of American fabric of society. So if you really want to see, what's the origin of racism in modernized time, you just look up Woodrow Wilson, because that's really the guy you kind of had to look for, because he's mainly the architect of how it works in this day and age. I mean, sure, you have also the primitive racism, which is let's say you kind of conquer some place and you kind of just have apartheid, and that's a primitive version, which is bad too. But the difference is when the apartheid was over, people didn't just go back to Britain and hey, let's practice some kind of social control system here. That never happened. So that's the point. The point is it kind of just kind of vanished away when they lost. So uh, yeah, if you compare that to the Woodrow Wilson era, which was more or less domestic racism of social control, that's a really where you kind of gotta go with. And for example, there's like lots of movies. For example, I couldn't watch 12 Years of Slave because I thought it was too brutal of a movie. I mean, I guess maybe I didn't like the whole idea of a humiliating person in front of someone. Maybe I thought that was too unrealistic. Even if they were slave women, they would kind of want to seem like on the surface level, they want to see like hey, I'm a good guy, but, and then they kind of take someone to the back and just whip them or something, which is it's inhumane and definitely evil and hell. But I don't think they want to try to seem like assholes in public. But yeah, that's just my opinion. I thought it was too brutal, uh, but yeah, but that's also what I want to cover a little bit about the movies, because I don't mind if you want to make some movies, but I think the whole jokes, at least I saw one by Onion, a parody of slave movies and civil rights movies, and they will all match up together. And I think the joke is that well, black people can't be anything but the slaves, and that's all their history. They can't be, businessmen. They can't do anything, and that's a joke. I think that's a joke because the whole exploitation of those movies, and yeah, I just thought that was funny because I do think people are human. So yeah, so yeah, that's the kind of the joke, really, But but in a sense of how to say it, yeah, about those movies, I also do think that it kind of creates a problem with if people have like a racist motive of because they see they kind of see the Civil War as a racial thing instead of an inhumane thing. I do think that's a wrong way to look at that war, because I just think it was more or less something. I mean, I don't think people just did it because I hate that guy. I want to keep him. I don't think that was all. I mean, that couldn't be all thing, really. It must have been some legit reason to why they didn't like the North. I don't think it was, hey, I want to keep my slaves. I don't think that was the whole picture. But I just think it was more about the inhumanity of people about the war. Just a whole shebang. Uh, so whenever I think of those movies that pumps out, I just and people are insanely engaging and emotional about it. I just sort of think people may find some more of a reason to be massive racist and just, they sort of see it like, oh, I want to kill that shithead, and they don't think, maybe that's not the whole point of the war, maybe that's I mean, I mean, if someone is a shithead, okay, fine, but they kind of see it in sort of like a black and white thing, like all those people they need to burn. I just, yeah, I just kind of think that's dangerous. But yeah, but if you disagree, let me know what you think. Really, that's really just what I want to cover in this video. And thank you for listening, and bye.